This is attorney David Rodriguez with immigration-consultation.lawyer. Today, I will compare and contrast the fiancé and marriage visas to help determine which route is best for you. This is a comprehensive video with a lot of information. I go as fast as I can, but I'm going to break it down for you. So, maybe you met your loved one while traveling abroad, Tinder, Facebook, playing an internet game, and now you want to bring that person to the US and live happily ever after. Basically, there's two ways, the K1 or the CR1. The K1 is the fiancé visa, where you say, hey government, this is my fiancé. I want to bring this person to the US for the purpose of getting married, and then we'll separately file for the green card. The CR1 is the marriage visa, where you say, hey government, this is my spouse. I want to bring him or her here, and then they'll automatically get a green card. And now you may say, hey, what about a tourist visa? You can check out my other video that explains why your fiance or spouse is most likely not getting a tourist visa. You can certainly try, but when he or she gets denied at the embassy, you're going to have more problems than just the couple $100 that you spent. Now, historically, the K1 was faster, but in 2024, you're approximately looking at 2 years for both, give or take. I know. You fly to the Philippines, everything's great. You say, honey, I'm bringing you home. And then you're sexting on the couch for the next 2 years. It sucks, but the processing times are out of my hands and any other lawyer's hands. So if a lawyer tells you, hey, it's 6 months, he's lying or he's been out of the game for a long time. Here's what happened. The system was already backlogged. Then they shut the world down for COVID. And then they let 1 billion people in. And in situations like these, it's always the tax-paying American who gets screwed. So after you file, I always recommend contacting your congressperson and we'll see what they do. So here's the first difference between the two visas. For the K1, you have to be a US citizen in order to file. You can't bring your fiance if you're a green card holder. You can only bring your spouse. So for the CR1, you could either be a citizen or a green card holder. Now, the processing times for green card holders is not much different. So the CR1 will probably be faster than filing for citizenship and then doing a K1, because now that's an extra process that you have to wait, and maybe you missed the 2-year window and then you have to go back again. So second, meeting in person. This means you're flying to your fiance or spouse's country. So get your passport and visa situated. You can check out my short video on passports and visas for the basics about that. The good news is that for most countries, a US citizen only needs a passport to enter. So for the K1, the meeting has to be within 2 years of filing your initial petition with USCIS. You can't meet that person 10 years ago and now say, hey, I want to do a K1. You're going to have to fly again. And you're also going to have to meet for the marriage visa as well. And I don't want to hear about an online marriage, because you can marry online, but according to the government, the marriage still has to be consummated, which, if you know what that means, it requires you to be in person. And we could also talk about religious customs, but I'm not really interested in that. We're dealing with the government right now, not religion. So with the meeting in person, you need proof of your trip, which means passport stamps, boarding passes, pictures of both of you in the same picture. If you meet in a third country, then you'll need your fiance or spouse's passports too, to prove that you're both in the same place at the same time. In addition to the meeting, you also have to prove that you have a relationship. And this could be evidence from the trips, but they also want to see some phone records, some chat records. Phone records aren't that great because it's a government and they want to read what you have to say to each other. Now, you could submit thousands of pages, but all really is required is a sampling of some chats over the course of your relationship. And keep it PG-13. No one wants to see freaky chats. So maybe 10 pages of chats, a couple extra proof of trip, a few emails here and there. If you have children together, obviously that's much better. Divorces. For a K1, you need to be single and free to marry. So all your divorces must be complete. And the government's going to want to see all the divorces. So if you got married and divorced back in the 90s, you're going to have to dig that up, even if you were already married subsequently after the fact. And you're going to have to contact the county or state, do a little search, and find out for those records, because the government's going to need every single one. Now, if your fiance or spouse was divorced, that may require a certified English translation. And once again, that will have to be all the divorces in the past. Now, for the Philippines, they don't do divorces. So if your fiance was married in the past in the Philippines, that person will need an annulment, and that's going to be a separate video. Criminal history. You can have criminal history and still get approved for both visas. The big difference is that with the K1 on the initial petition, you'll need to provide your criminal records. They ask on the questions about any arrests, not even convictions. So the easiest way to get all those records is getting an FBI report. The government likes government stuff, and the federal government likes federal government stuff. And yes, they do background checks, but it's on you to provide the paperwork. The marriage visa doesn't ask about criminal history, and you don't have to provide the records. So they could always do a request for evidence and require you to send them in, but for the most part, you don't need to provide any evidence of criminal history. Some crimes are going to be a problem. 3 or more DUIs, any domestic violence, sex crimes, anything with children, and of course, really hardcore felonies. That's something we could talk about in a consultation. But now let's get to the paperwork. The processes for both are very similar. There's a petition filed with USCIS. The U.S. citizen or green card holder is the petitioner. The beneficiary is the fiance or spouse. The paperwork is different though, because the K1 is technically a non-immigrant visa, which means you have to do a separate process called an adjustment of status after your fiance enters the U.S. and you marry within 90 days of entry. The CR1 is an immigrant visa, with the result being a green card upon entry. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1. You get the visa, automatically get the green card, although you still may have to wait a couple months to get it in the mail after your spouse enters the country. The two categories, non-immigrant and immigrant, is all about intent. Intent is the reason, most likely, why your fiance or spouse will not get a tourist visa. Once again, check out the video for more info. So the K1 is a 2-step process: the visa, getting married, and then the separate filing for the green card. While the CR1 is 2 processes combined: get the visa, automatically get the green card. That's why many people say the K1 is faster, but nothing is fast nowadays. Next is money. After USCIS approval, so not with the initial petition, you're going to have to show the money. And how do you show the money? Tax returns. Once again, the government likes government stuff. So the easiest thing to do is get your free IRS tax transcript. Keep in mind, when you file your taxes, the most recent tax return may be the one for next year, because the process takes so long. So it's not something you need to do right away when you file your petition. Make sure you're above the U.S. poverty guidelines. For 2024, it's just above 30,000 for a household of 2. And it goes up a few grand for every additional dependent. So if you have kids at home or bringing children with your fiance or spouse, you'll have to earn more money. What if you're retired, Social Security benefits, you don't have to file taxes? That's okay, but you'll still have to show the 1099 from Social Security and the bank statements with the direct deposit. If you're self-employed, you may want to consider taking less deductions to put you over the top. So that would require some planning. I've heard thousands of times self-employed people go, oh, I make tons of money. And then you see a tax return and it shows 10,000. In addition, you can show assets, but you don't have to. The tax return is the most important thing. And yes, you can have a co-sponsor for both processes, but if you don't have a close family member or friend who has your back, then good luck getting tax returns from an acquaintance or workmate at crunch time. And one caveat is the Philippines does not allow co-sponsors for fiancé visas. So if you're dealing with the Philippines, you're not making the money, and you have a co-sponsor, you may need to get married over there and do a marriage visa. Police clearances. Your fiancé or spouse will require a police clearance from their home country and any other countries they lived in for at least 6 months at a time. There's a couple countries that are off the list. Indonesia, for example, no police clearances. There's a whole list of countries with instructions. on how to get the police clearance. I could show you how to do that with a consultation. The timing for these is crucial because some of these clearances expire after 6 months or a year. So you don't want to get one immediately. It may not be valid come interview time, and you may have to get another one. And if your fiance or spouse lived in a third country, you may want to consider chipping away at that sooner than later, because some hoops are being jumped through to go from one country to the next to get these police clearances. A good time to get them in general is after USCIS approval, because it does take time to go to the National Visa Center and then to the embassy. In addition, these clearances will sometimes require certified English translations, which is more money, more time. Children, yes, you can bring children. For the K1, the child has to be under 21 prior to filing the petition. For the CR1, the child has to be under 18 prior to filing. So this means the child can become older by the time they get the visa, but the paperwork must initially be filed before these two ages are met. So if your fiance or spouse has older children, that can make the difference on whether you do a fiance or marriage visa, because it's easier to bring the child if it's a child. Once the child gets above the age, and for the K1 it's 21, for the CR1 it's 18, then the child is considered a son or daughter and not a child, and can't come with. All right. The next step is the visa application. After the petition is approved, the case will transfer to the National Visa Center. And for the K1, they're going to ship it directly to the embassy. Whereas with the marriage visa, the paperwork is submitted to the National Visa Center, and then they automatically schedule the interview. And the interesting thing is, with the K1, despite being a non-immigrant visa, the interview will take place with the immigrant visa department. So it's not the same place where he or she was denied the tourist visa. It's a whole different ballgame. And a lot of times now, these embassies are implementing a new online interview registration process. The process is not uniform, as the systems are being implemented around the world. So this could be a little tricky. Right now, they use US travel docs, but there's other sites that different countries use in order to register the interview with the embassy. In many cases, this registration cannot be done until the embassy has officially received your case from the National Visa Center. You've gotten the new case number, MNL for Manila, RDJ for Rio de Janeiro, but the embassy doesn't know you exist because they have to receive the case from the National Visa Center. So you can't register until they actually have your case at the embassy. Even if the interview is scheduled automatically through the CR1 marriage visa, there may still need to be some online registration to maybe set up your medical exam. And that is the next step, the medical exam. Every country has specific doctors connected to each embassy that your fiance or spouse will have to go to. The medical exam needs to be done towards the end of the process prior to the interview. And oftentimes the medical doctor's office will automatically submit the medical records to the embassy, or they may give your fiance or spouse a sealed envelope to bring to the embassy. And of course, you can't open that. Finally, let's talk about the interview. The interview takes place at the US Embassy in your fiance or spouse's country. Often you can't pick or choose. If your fiance or spouse resides in a different country, living or working, not just visiting, then it may be possible for the case to go there automatically or be transferred. I've been successful in transferring many cases, but I've also gotten the runaround. So there are designated countries for a few places like Iran, where the interview could take place in Turkey or the UAE. Russia, over the past few years, has been an issue. They've designated Poland, yet at the same time, it's difficult for Russians to get the Schengen visa to then go to Poland. That could be difficult in some cases. Now, after all of that, I have to tell you that most K1 and CR1s get approved. A case can be real, it has to be really sketchy for the case to be denied. Sometimes there'll be an RFE, a request for evidence, to supplement a missing doc. That won't deny it just for that. It's not a tourist visa. You may have to jump through a couple extra hoops. It may take longer, but they're not going to deny it just for missing one doc. With that being said, make sure all the paperwork is there, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. So rest assured, if you meet the qualifications, have a legit relationship, and file the paperwork properly, then chances are the visa will be successful. You just have to hang in there, because not everyone makes it. 2 years is a long time. And hopefully it's not 2 years. Hopefully it's faster. But I'm just keeping it real with the time frames. And hopefully you can make some more trips and keep the fires burning during the process. In the meantime, consider a consultation with me at immigrationconsultation.lawyer. I don't take cases without a consultation. If you want to file on your own, that's okay. I can help you through the process without forming that attorney-client relationship. Ultimately, this is what I do. This is what I know. So I look forward to sharing my experience and guiding you on your immigration journey. So thank you and have a great day.